Assalamu alaikum. My name is Kayvan. I'm from the United States, and this is my story. My journey actually begins about 7,000 miles away from the United States. It's a land that is beautiful, and when I grew up there, it was very free. It's a land of biblical kings and ancient history. It's a land of empires, a land of spices. It's well known for its rugs. It's a land that was transformed in the 19th century with the discovery of the second largest oil deposit in the world. By now, you probably guessed what that country is. It's Iran. This was where I was raised in the 1970s. But my life was changed dynamically in 1979. This time, there was a large revolution. The people revolted against the Shah, and he was ousted. A new government came in that was actually quite a bit more radical. It took away a lot of the freedoms that we were used to having. And so this religious persecution caused all the missionaries to be kicked out and a lot of people to be killed because of their faith. Now, my parents, because of our Muslim background and heritage, and also because we were non-political, this didn't really affect us that much, so we were willing to stay. But in 1980, another large thing happened in my country. It was the invasion of Saddam Hussein to my country of Iran. And the bombs began to fall, and it became a scary place and time to live. So my parents talked about it, and they realized that we would never have the same opportunities as they had growing up with the education and the freedoms. And so they had to make a very hard decision to leave almost everything behind and leave that country. And they did. We left our families, we left our livelihood, a lot of our income, our house, and our business, and made our way to Spain, and eventually found our way to the United States after that. When we came here, because of the place that we lived and the kind of the secular nature of America, we actually didn't really do much when it came to religion. I would pray on my own. But my parents never really forced us to pray or read the Quran. It was just something that I did on my own because I still wanted to connect to God the way I used to when I lived in Iran, the way I used to when I went to mosque or masjid with my grandma. But I realized as I got a little bit older, maybe this is all made up. Maybe I made this whole thing up. What if there isn't a God? And if there is a God, why would he do such horrible things like what happened to my country? And so I became angry at God and I rejected him probably around my junior high, 13 or 14 years old. Curiously enough, one of my best friends around that time went to church and became a Christian. And he comes back and tells me, I'm a Christian. Kayvan, you need to become a Christian too. And I laughed at him and I said, are you crazy? I've given up on this religion thing and here you are wanting to be a Christian? He goes, yeah, it's awesome. It's changing my life. And he invited me to church. He invited me to youth group. And I wouldn't go to church, but occasionally I'd go to youth group. But I really didn't understand when they talked about God, why they would talk about him as if he was real, as if he was in the room. They would talk about it and praise him and sing songs to him, and I'd be like, this is just nuts. But I kind of wanted a little bit of it, but I didn't. And so I left, and after that year, I didn't go back to church for the next couple years. It wasn't until my senior year when I was 17 that I actually, curiously enough, wanted to go on my own, and I did. I went into that youth group that my friend was at. I began to listen and hear the stories of grace, faith, hope, trust, and things began to make a little bit more sense. So much so that I actually invited my non-Christian friends to come with me to the youth group. And I remember it was 1992 where an amazing thing happened in my life. It was New Year's Eve, December 31st, 1992, and we were at a party. And 5 minutes before New Year's happened, our pastor said, let's stop and let's just pray. Let God answer any question you have. And as I prayed a prayer for my friends that I'd brought to the party, I heard these words when everything was silent in the room. Why are you praying for them when you don't know me yourself? And I looked up thinking that it was the pastor speaking, but it wasn't because he was so far away. And I closed my eyes and I heard that voice again. Why are you praying for them when you don't know me yourself? I remember thinking in my head, God, this is you. And why is it that I believe you're right for the world, but I haven't accepted you? So I did. That's my birthday. My spiritual birthday is that day, and I received him. And my life was dynamically changed. I began to want to read the Bible. I began to want to go to church. I actually snuck off to church for the next several months without my parents knowing until one day they caught me with a Bible at home. And when they caught me, they said, what are you doing with the Bible? And I said, I'm a Christian. They said, who let you be a Christian? And I said, only God. And I asked them, they asked me why I was going to church. And I said, I want to know more about God. And it was amazing because even though they were against Christianity, even though they were against religion at that time, they let me go. They even let me go to Mexico that year when I asked if I could go on a mission trip. And on that trip, another amazing thing happened in my life. I remember after a few days of ministry, I was so overwhelmed by the love of God that I began to weep and I separated myself from the group. I began to sit in some cornfields next to where we were and I just wept and wept. And my pastor, after about half an hour, came and found me and said, what's wrong? Why are you crying? I said, my heart hurts. And he said, do you need me to take you to the hospital? I said, no, it's not that kind of pain. It hurts because there's such a weight of the lost. I said, why is it that I had so many opportunities to hear the gospel? So many people got a chance to share it with me, yet so few in the world have heard the message of Jesus. And I want the world to know this message and know the love of God like I do. And he said, maybe you're called to be a pastor, maybe you're called to be an evangelist or a missionary. And I said, I don't know what those things are, but I just want the world to know Jesus like I do. I went to college after that. I got a chance to grow in my faith and serve at a church up there. And then God called me to San Jose to work in an Iranian church, a church that is working among Muslims, a completely Muslim convert church. People like myself I ran into, and it was awesome to be around a group that was so passionate for the lost, especially the Muslims. We began a broadcast ministry in Tehran early in the 2000s to share the gospel through the airwaves, where I got a chance to share my story and many other things with them as well. Now there's 4 stations that are broadcasting 24 hours a day, 4 different ministries that are doing incredible work through the airwaves. I want to end with a verse that really encourages me. It comes from Jeremiah 29:11. It says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. And I look at that and I think, my future was dynamically changed by a lot of horrible things. But also, God had a plan through all of it. And I know God has a plan for every one of us that is rich, that is powerful, that is meaningful. And that's my prayer, that the world would know this loving Jesus, that the world would know we serve the God of the impossible. And thank you so much for listening to my story.